A new Lending Tree survey suggests shoplifting is on the rise, and it's not just big ticket items. Brianna Harris joins us live in the studio with more on what that survey found. Brianna?
Well, Kathy, the Lending Tree survey found 30% of Americans say they've shoplifted, up from 23% in 2024. And a lot of what people admit taking are everyday essentials. I spoke with Lending Tree Chief Consumer Finance Analyst Matt Schultz, and he says the survey clearly shows higher prices and the economy are a big part of what's behind this. Now, he says among people who shoplifted in the past year, 90% blame inflation and the broader economy. And when it comes to what's being taken, food and non-alcoholic drinks top the list at 30%, followed by clothing and accessories at 25%, and hygiene products at 20%. Grocery stores were the most commonly reported location, followed by dollar stores and department stores. Schultz says these numbers point to more than just theft. He says they point to financial strain.
High prices, whether it's groceries or gas or whatever, are really causing an issue and making things really challenging for them and shrinking their financial margin for error down to practically zero. And when that sort of thing happens, people look for ways to make their lives better. And it's pretty clear with this report that a lot of people see shoplifting as a way to make their lives a little bit better.
Schultz says when people frame it as a quick fix, the consequences can be serious if you're caught. I did reach out to police in Cape Girardeau who tell me they've not seen a noticeable increase in shoplifting reports. Live in the studio, Brianna Harris, Heartland News.